Long trip, final match today. What was the biggest takeaway of your time in Portugal?
Well, I think it was a good opportunity, one, to get everyone together that was available and really start to implement the tactical tweaks that we want to bring forward in 2026. And, I think a big part of that was how we are going to use our defensive structure to create more attacking transition moments. In other words, attack a disorganized defense. And the guys in each one of the games we played did a great job of that. And I think two of the three games we had, or actually in the three games we had three 1v1s with the goalkeeper. And the next part is capitalizing on those. But I think they've really taken on to the way we want to defend. And how it's rewarded us not only by keeping the ball out of the net, but also by creating good quality chances. And then the other part is being not being so predictable in the way we play. So again, we want to be a team that controls the game with the ball, but we also want to, be threatening behind back lines. And I think in all three games we found a good balance of both of those. And so I'm just so pleased with with the way they've adapted to the tweaks, taken it on, played with confidence while still expressing their own individuality, which I think is really important. So it's been a great 2 weeks here in Portugal, and now we head home to kind of again fine tune before we head to California.
Yeah. Victor joined and Ari joined the group today for the final game. We weren't able to watch. Would you give us a little insight on how they look with the group?
Yeah, I think Ari'd been training quite a bit with with the Australian U23s, and Victor was coming off of quite a long, lengthy off season, but they both look sharp. Obviously, there's a lot to catch up on for them, but I think in moments they were both really really sharp with the ball, and now it's really about getting their fitness levels up to match the team's fitness. Because I think our guys that have been with us have been working extremely hard. And but again, I think they both had really good chances today. Um, and obviously, I don't know if you saw it, but Victor scored one of the best bicycle kicks I've seen in my life. That was called back because the ref thought that his it was a high kick, and so but it was a fantastic goal. So they're both looking sharp. They're going to need some time, but really excited to have both of them in camp.
Yeah. Last one from me. Who from this younger age group, kind of the homegrown, stood out to you the most in this camp?
Yeah, I think each there's a few of them that took turns. I think really looking extremely well. I think Omar and Luca Moisa, Omar Marquez and Luca Moisa did a really good job in the second game. Against a really good Bromby team, first team, and we didn't miss a beat when they were on the field together. And so they did a really good job in that game. And then today for me, Aiden Herzakani was class and on both sides of the ball, defensively, offensively. He had probably four or five runs where he isolated the defender, turned him, got to goal, and again, it's that last little bit, someone getting on the end of it or putting it on frame. But Aiden has really grown in camp, and today he was one of the bright spots, not just for the homegrowns, but for the whole first team.
Awesome. Thanks, Pablo.
Yep.
Hey, Marcos, go ahead.
Yeah, Pablo, just talk us through what you've seen from Lucas Engel. Obviously, he didn't play in this last game, but talk us through these first two games. What you've seen that you liked about him.
Yeah, yeah, he's been, first of all, his demeanor is really professional. He exudes a lot of confidence in his game, and he's really experienced. So with those three things, I think without even stepping on the field, brings a lot to our group. And then on the field, he's got a great he's got a lot of diversity in his game. His passing is really sharp, short, mid-range, and over distance. Balls over the top, played with a lot of culture. In other words, balls that are feathered into the nines as opposed to just kicking it up there. His understanding of when to play forward, when to step on it and keep possession of the ball, And then his defending has been really good as well. He's aggressive when he needs to be and steps in to win balls that get played into the forwards, but he's also really good with his footwork and body shape to protect the depth. And so all around, I couldn't be more pleased with what Lucas Engel has brought to our group in the first 2 weeks.
And then you just kind of touched on it last question, but positive and negative so far that you've seen in Portugal, and then things that you still want to improve on in these last 3 weeks.
Yeah, I think there's always going to be, especially when you're changing your shape defensively, it's gonna take some time. But the irony is, I'd say because we focused on it so much, that's the part of the game that they've really taken to, and from that we've created, like I said, we in 3 games we've created 3 1-on-1s with the goalkeeper, and so. What happens with our shape is oftentimes when teams want to commit numbers forward, but we're in a great block and everyone's getting after the ball once they cross a certain trigger. Oftentimes we're either outnumbering our opponent's back line or we're even numbers. And then the decisions, whether it's Gozo or Diego, the guys up front their movements in transition have been really, really good. The decisions have been really good. And the only thing, that we haven't been able to do is just put the ball in the back of the net in those moments. But I feel like as a group, when you're creating those kind of chances, it encourages the behaviors that we're looking for defensively. So that's been real positive. I'd say um, from an attacking perspective, the biggest thing for me, and I think we still need a bit of time with, is having more forward options further down the field. So third line options. Last year we were really good at breaking teams down. Oftentimes it was with 10 passes. And so what we're trying to implement this year is we still want to be a team that controls the ball. But if teams are going to play a high line, how can our actions in the third line allow us to get in behind defenses to create, again, for me, anytime you're running with the ball between lines, it's almost a transition moment. So mimicking a lot of what we experience when we're defending and we win the ball. And so I think that third line attacking will be critical for us this year. And the guys have taken on to it, and obviously it we've been working on a lot of coordinated movements. So if it's a 10 checking, it's the 9 running off. If it's the 9 checking, it's the 10 running off. And again, from those moments, we've created a great deal of chances. And so to be more diversified in the way we attack, I think will be critical for our group this year. So, and I'd say that's the area where, that part of the game is always going to be the one that takes the most time because you have to be, you have to be in sync. You have to understand your teammates' behaviors. Is he good with this pass? Is he more inclined to play it between the lines? And so it's just, I think, more familiarity amongst the players in those positions will take some time, but the actions have been really good, and they've taken it on with a great mindset mentality.
And then I guess last question for me is, how happy as a coach do you feel with seeing all these options now with depth in the back line, depth in the midfield going into this new season?
Yeah, this is by far, I don't want to say by far because we've had some talented teams, but as far as going into a season with this caliber of player and not to mention the experiences that we gained from last year with the players returning, and the mindset that we had to be able to get back into that wild card game after a really tough campaign. I think you put all that together, and I couldn't be more optimistic as to what kind of team we're going to be in this league. And the expectations I have for the group and they have for themselves is so much higher, and you can feel it every training session. You can feel it in the games, and so for me, it's a great place to be. So like I said, we've built a really good foundation in these first 3 weeks. And now with the addition of other players coming in and join the group, I think they're coming into the group at a great time where the spirit is high, the football's been great, and the belief is there. So really, really excited for this year.
Grant?
Pablo, you've got a few more weeks left before opening game. How is that? Your thoughts on the starting lineup starting to gel?
Right.
I'm sure that maybe Cabral and then anyone standing out there.
Yeah, no, I think there's so many moving pieces at the moment. We're just kind of going through the list of of our group going to California, but with all the potential incoming players, and more importantly, their visa situations, it makes it incredibly difficult to know who's even going to be available for that first game. So again, I think from a coaching perspective, the challenge for us is if anyone joins us for that first game of the season, it's a bonus, but we're going to really count on the guys that have been in Portugal. And obviously, there's a couple guys leaving. Stein's leaving camp today. There's a couple others leaving camp today. So there's just a lot of coming and going in the next couple weeks to see if we can't get them in. So there's a good chance that, nine of the starters will be guys that have been playing in these games, which is a good thing because I think the continuity of the group has been good. And then keep our fingers crossed that we get a couple of those visas across the line so that we can have everyone available, if not for the first game, hopefully the second game.
With having so much depth, like you just talked about, how do you find playing time, finding
Mhm.
opportunities for players, and with the roster being built, what about players maybe finding opportunities for some of these younger players,
Yeah.
with loans, and what is that
Yeah.
process looking
Yeah,
like?
no, that's a great question, and those are things we're kind of going through as a staff with Kurt and Jason and Tony, and making sure that we set up the group for success. And by the group, I mean the guys that have done a really good job with the academy. And I think that's always the tricky part, right? And I don't think uh, there's not one right pathway for each player. Some of the guys have excelled really well at the Monarchs level, but maybe they just won't see enough playing time with the first team. So definitely looking to other options to make sure we put them in the best position to be successful. And I think as kind of the season unfolds, I think we'll have a better idea as to what that looks like. In the meantime, today Aiden Herzakani played an amazing game on both sides of the ball, and again against an MLS opponent. And so when you look at that, you say, "Wow, we got a potential starter, a potential guy that can come in games." But obviously, depending on who's in camp and who's not, so I think it's case by case. But yeah, you bring up a really great question. The last thing that we want to do is block the pathways for these young guys that have a lot of potential. And if there isn't an opportunity with the first team in a certain amount of games, then definitely finding an avenue that makes sense for them to continue with their development.
What about Emeka Anelli? Is he
Mm,
just struggling with injury, or
yeah.
haven't heard his name called all
Yeah.
preseason?
It's been tough with Emeka. He's been dealing with a bit of a knee towards the latter part of last season. In the off season, he was having pain in December. He comes back and he trains for about a week, and then we get to Portugal, and he just can't even run. So our docs are, he had an MRI here. Our docs are understand they're still trying to figure out exactly what is going on, and there's a lot of question marks with that. So unfortunately, Mecca's only had probably 5 days of preseason. So the way I look at it, it's going to take some time for him to, one, recover from this, but two, get back up to speed from a fitness perspective to be able to contribute meaningfully. So, yeah, it's been tough for Emeka, and it pains me to see him not in with the group, especially when we have all this time to really, sharpen things up.
And then finally, from me, preseason is all about possibility and what could be. Is
Mhm.
there anyone that really stands out that what might be a dark horse that by the end of the season would be another Caliscan, a Nelly, so to speak, that you have high hopes for without jinxing them?
Yeah, that's a good question. Again, Noel for me has been an absolute beast in the middle midfield. I think with every year he just continues to take another step up. The way he's controlling the ball, his decision making, his defending, his communication, his positioning. I mean, I'm just so impressed. And I usually I have this bias where I compare midfielders to the player I was when I was playing. And I'll just tell you now that this guy is about 10 years ahead of me. So I'm continuously left in awe with Noel's performances. And then Another young player in Ruben Messias. He's played both wing back and left center back, and he's had an amazing preseason. Obviously, played with the Monarchs last year, but whether it's wing back or left center back, he has been really, really good. So have really high hopes for him. Luca Moisa has and Omar have both done a really commendable job in the middle midfield, with very little time to adapt to the speed of the game at this level, but they've held their own and done a really good job. And I think Zach Booth has been a bright spot as well. He's really flexible tactically. He can play as a interior 10. He can, and today he played like 20 minutes as a pivot and did really well. So another good young player that has European experience that can contribute meaningfully. So there's just a bunch of great players. And I think the one that stands out above all has been Sergi Solans. This guy is the the nuances of the game, holding the ball up and using his body to hold the ball up, his running without the ball, his pressing is so it's incredible to see that a young player that's been in college has this type of pedigree. And so I think he's a guy that's going to come into the first team and contribute meaningful minutes from the get-go.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Michelle, last question en español, si tú quieres. Or no?
Sorry, I was in the middle of doing translation work. Pero no tengo ninguna pregunta. Quizás solo cómo te sientes de regresar otra vez a Utah.
Sí, no, yo creo que después los primeros 10 días, los chicos están listos para regresar a la casa con la familia, pero han puesto un buen esfuerzo en las 2 semanas, han jugado bastante bien y veo que son un grupo unidos, que siempre están juntos y están afuera del hotel, dentro del hotel jugando las cartas. Son un equipo, un grupo bien unidos y eso me da un poco de orgullo porque yo veo el mismo tipo de mentalidad cuando están en la cancha. Están unidos, trabajan fuerte y son muy buenos compañeros, pero yo creo que después de 2 semanas estamos todos listos para regresar a Utah, pasar tiempo con la familia, para cargar la batería para ir a California.
Perfecto, les espera mucho sol aquí, ¿eh? Y
Gracias.
cero lluvia.
All right, thanks, Pablo. Thanks, everybody.